So I'll kick us off. Welcome everyone to Ready to Teach Week. We're in the first week, which is exciting, and we're doing teaching essentials today. So, not surprisingly, hopefully it's the essentials of teaching to get you ready for this semester. Oh, where's my clicker? There we go. So I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. Um, so the University of Queensland acknowledges the traditional owners and their custodianships on the lands of which we meet. We do pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country, and we recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. And yesterday, I read about the anniversary of the Woodward Commission, which happened in 1973, and it was an inquiry into Aboriginal land rights in the Northern Territory. And as a result of that inquiry, there was a recommendation which led to the landmark act that was introduced in the Northern Territory, which was the Aboriginal Land Rights Act in 1976. And it just made me really reflect and reminded me of the value of that phrase in our acknowledgement of country about the custodianships of the lands of which we meet, because all lands have history, and particularly in Australia, this is often quite a dark history. And I think UQ Library has done a wonderful job of recognising the history of UQ's lands. So if you haven't already, potentially go and have a read of the UQ Black History, which outlines some of the history of our lands here at UQ. So who do we have in the room today? We have myself. So I'm Charlotte Young. I am the strategic lead of inclusive teaching and learning here at the Institute for Teaching and Learning Innovation. And I'm joined by my co-conspirator, Dr. Karen Shepherd, who's also a strategic lead, but in evaluation and partnerships. And I've used a cockatoo and a kookaburra to represent us, and both of us are running because we like to both run, except Karen's more hardcore than me because she's a trail runner. She likes to run and make it really difficult, whereas I'm a little bit soft. I like my pavements and my treadmills, but that's okay. Oh, Karen's saying something, but I don't know what you're saying. But yes. But if you wouldn't mind just popping in the chat who you are, your role, and what brought you to be here with us in the room today. Welcome, Hannah, a new lecturer in the School of Economics. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to UQ and to teaching. It's always nerve-wracking. I find it nerve-wracking. You might be fine with it. Med school, okay. Year one facilitator. Yeah, okay. Aurora, I'm about to start teaching for the first time. Looking forward to it. Okay, excellent in communications. Also in the Bell Factory. I'm a news lecturer in the School of Medicine. Thank you, Leonie. Michelle got a new lecturing at UQ. Lovely. Pam, lecturer and tutor in UQBS. Lisa, I'm a lecturer in architecture. I've tutored lots and now course coordinating. Yeah, it's a bit of a step up there, Lisa. So welcome. Bryony, I'm about to start lecturing for the first time in the Faculty of Science. Pablo, a visiting academic from Spain at the School of Languages. Lovely. Caroline, tutoring in the School of Economics. Oh, thank you. I hope you do learn something today. And all right, keep it coming. Excellent. So it seems like we have a lot of new people and some people who've done tutoring and are now stepping up to course coordination. That's good because we have some tips and things that may be useful for you as we go through today's session. So before we really get into it, I would just like to do some little sort of expectation things. First of all, just sort of one voice at a time. So if I'm talking, if you could leave your microphones on mute, that would be really lovely. But equally, this is interactive. So if you do have a question, feel free to pop your hand up. I'm happy to go to you to ask your question out loud, or you're welcome to put it in the chat at any time. You're welcome to have your video on and off as you would like to. I always like seeing faces, but I understand if you're at a shared office and you don't want to put your camera on, that's completely fine as well. As I said, please feel free to use the chat or put your hand up or jump in as you need to. We will be running an evaluation poll at the end of this session, and we will share the slide deck. So if you're thinking, we have put a lot of text in these slides, which is not usual for us, but we've done that on purpose so that these can be a reference point for you later on. And there are quite a few links in our slides as well. So we will share these slides at the end of the presentation so you have access to those links and those notes as we go. So today, we think about this workshop as more of guidelines and signposts, which I think is probably a rule for UQ in general, actually, because we have a lot of rules and guidelines depending on where you are at UQ. We will share some useful tips and ideas on setting yourself up for a successful semester. However, we won't have all the answers. And obviously, things will be dependent on the context in which you're teaching. So some things that we say might not necessarily fit well within your context, and that's okay. Please feel free to take what's useful for your context and leave the rest behind, or equally, it might all be appropriate for your context. So what we'll cover today, we'll be talking about how you can find out a little bit more about your course and your students. Some of the UQ systems that will be the sort of main systems that you will need to get you started. There's a lot of UQ systems. We won't be able to go through all of them, but we will touch on the ones that you will need to interact with just to get your semester started, particularly if you're a course coordinator. And setting some expectations and communication strategies with your students. What we won't cover, because unfortunately we only have an hour and a half, which seems like a long time, but it goes quick. We won't be helping you set up your Blackboard site or Ultra, although we may give you some tips on things you can do along the way. Oh, I just put a thumbs up on myself. I don't know how I did that. Anyway, that wasn't me. Obviously, my piece of paper is leaning in my keyboard, and I'm just giving myself a thumbs up. Sorry if that keeps happening. But yeah, we won't be helping you set up your Blackboard site or Ultra, although there are a number of sessions during Ready to Teach Week that will help you with that if that is what you're looking for to do. We won't be helping you set up your course profile, but we may mention a few things that would be good to have in your course profile. We can also send you to somebody if you are looking for help with your course profile setup. And unfortunately, we can't set up your assessment rubric in the time that we have. But again, we can refer you to people who can help you with that if you need it. So what's the plan today? We're going to find out a bit about your course and your students. And it keeps flicking on me. We're going to look at how to make the best use of your course profile and your course Blackboard site. We're going to help look at how we can design a sort of communication strategy to have with your students and think about how you're going to set those expectations with your students. And as we go through the presentation, we'll give you little points to pause and think about these different things and sort of develop a little checklist of what you're going to do in the semester with you and your students. So first off, how are we going to find out about your course and your students? Now, again, we have made this very text dense, so I apologize for that. It's, again, not something we recommend, but we are making this a referral point for you later on. So things that you can do to help with your course in the first instance. You can check out past course profiles. So there is a spot, if you click on that link, that you can go and look at all of the different course profiles that are the previous versions of your course. Okay, so that will be what's accessible and viewable to students. And then you can see from that document, what were the course learning outcomes? What were the activities? What were the assessments? And so forth. And that can be really useful because you can often go back quite a few years, so you can kind of see the history of how that course has developed if you would like to. But you can also equally see course profiles for other courses as well, which can be quite useful if you're teaching your course in parallel to another course. You can look at previous course teaching feedback. So there is a place a platform at UQ called Reportal. And on that portal, you can see previous quantitative feedback for courses. So at UQ, we have what's called CCAT, which is what students fill out. It's an evaluation form on teaching, and they can rate a course from across 8 questions, and you get a course rating at the end of the semester, and you also get qualitative comments, which are only accessible to the course coordinator or the teaching team. But you are very welcome to go back and look at previous versions of CCATs to see what the sort of quantitative scores were for students for that particular course. And if you are friendly with the previous course coordinator, you might be able to also ask them for the qualitative feedback from the previous course coordinator as well, so that you can kind of see what might have been some of the things that students were a little bit worried about in the previous course. You can clarify what's expected in your current offering, and I'll talk to you about who you might ask about that in a moment. You can understand how the course fits into the program. So are you a first year course or are you a fourth year course? Are you a core course that, 7 different programs need to take, or are you an elective that might only be in sort of that one program might take? and identify any accreditation, fieldwork, or compliance requirements. And we put that in because some courses at UQ are very rigid in that the accreditation requirements are kind of locked down what's possible to do in that course, and that's all you're allowed to do. Whereas other programs may not have accreditation requirements, so you have more flexibility on what you're allowed to teach in that particular course. So when it comes to your network, and this is who I'm thinking about when I say you can clarify what's expected in your current course. So there's multiple people that you may need or can connect with depending on your context. So there may be a program coordinator that might be useful for you to talk about or talk with, because they might have a program map of where they want sort of each course to fit and what they want each course to be doing. There, you can also talk to the director of teaching and learning who sort of looks after teaching and learning within the school and sort of tries to drive excellence and drive different initiatives to make sure that, the school's actions in teaching and learning are aligned with the university sort of policy. As I mentioned before, you can speak with past course coordinators and you might ask them if they can share the course qualitative feedback with you. That way you might be able to get insight into what the students liked and what the students didn't like. You can meet with course coordinators of prerequisite courses to find out. So for instance, if you're a second year course, you might want to meet with the first year coordinator, find out what did you teach in that course, so that, I'm not doubling up and reiterating content they should already know, but I'm actually building on that content appropriately. You can find a teaching buddy or mentor or peer reviewer from your colleagues, or sometimes it's useful to have one that's sort of external to your school as well to give you insight into a different discipline. We have faculty and school learning designers who are fabulous. I'm not biased at all. They're wonderful. And you can go and have a chat with them about what's happening in your course. Whether if you need assistance sort of redesigning things, they might be able to help you. But they're also just a really good conduit as well. If you're feeling unsure about who or what to do, they might be a good person to reach out to and they can direct you to the right avenue as well. We also have library liaisons. So if you have any questions about, resources for your students and literature that you want them to read, they can help you with that as well. How to find out more about your students. So the students that are coming into your cohort or the students that might have done their course in previous years. So you can have a look at student enrollment in the Course Insights, which Karen's going to show us in a moment. So that is a tool that's open to course coordinators for you to see sort of who's in your course currently. As I said before, you can have conversations with previous course coordinators or tutors to find out a little bit about what the cohorts were like previously. So, was there high anxiety around a particular topic area with previous students? Did they find group work harder or easier to work with? Did they have trouble with having, challenging conversations in class, whatever it might be? You can also invite your students to introduce themselves on your course discussion board or Padlet through a welcome video, or they could put up a discussion post. Those sorts of informal ways of getting to know students is really valuable because it also shows to students that you're interested in them and that you want to hear from them really early in the course, which is quite nice. And the other one I've put there is Reportal. So again, this is a system that's available at UQ. It's a repository of a great deal of information. If you haven't already got access to it, you do need to fill out a form. It's through that portal. And usually it's your head of school that has to sign off it. But once you have access to it, that will give you access to previous course and actually multiple courses CCAT. So the CCAT scores, that evaluation survey that I mentioned that students do. It also gives you access to course reports, which when you look at it will show you sort of the history of your course in terms of pass rates for students, the demographics of your students, whether you usually have high international or domestic students, male, female, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. You also have like attrition rates. So whether you have a really big drop in the number of students after sort of week 2, it has all of that data in there for previous iterations of your course, and it can be a really nice way of kind of getting insight on your cohort. So it's a little bit, it's a few steps to get access to it, but once you've got access to it, it can be a really nice source of information for your courses. And lastly, your team. So your team are really important, and it obviously it will vary depending on the school and faculty you're in, because some of you will be in very large teaching teams depending on the size of your cohort, and some of you might be a team of yourself, in which case communicating to yourself is hopefully a bit easier, but some of you may have, 30 or 40 people in your teaching team. So obviously that communication with your team is going to be a little bit more intensive for you to prep at the beginning of semester. So consider who you will need to be a part of your planning and preparation for your course. So for instance, I used to teach in the School of Biomedical Sciences, and it was quite common that, sorry, I was a learning designer in the School of Biomedical Sciences. I didn't teach, I helped the academics there. I taught in public health. But in biomedical sciences, it was very common for there to be sort of 6 or 7 lecturers throughout the course of the semester. And so when planning for that semester, all 6 of those people would need to be part of the preparation for the course, because you would need to determine the content, the organization of lecturers so that they weren't clashing between their own teaching into other courses as well. So the planning for that and preparation for that, all of those stakeholders needed to be involved in it. So it might be your co-teachers, it might be your conveners, it might be your tutors or school admin. It could be prac coordinators if you're in a school that has practicals and so forth. So again, it can be a little bit tricky to find out who are the right people. And that's where your program conveners or your directors of teaching and learning can help you to kind of find out who are the main people that I might need to talk to. We also have what's called a policy and procedural library, which is called the PPL for short. And the PPL has lots of information on it. It has stuff about assessment policy. It has, that classes, lectures need to be recorded. It has, our reasonable adjustment policy. It has all sorts of policy around teaching and learning. But the one I'm going to refer you to in this particular instance is it outlines the roles and responsibilities of key teaching roles at UQ. So it will have what the key responsibilities are for course coordinators, and it lists it as before, during, and after semester. So if you go look at the PPL and look at course coordinators, it will tell you these are the activities you have to do before the semester, these are the activities you have to do during the semester, and these are the activities expected of you after the semester. And that can be really helpful. It'll also tell you other key roles at the university, such as the Director of Teaching and Learning, the Chief Examiner, and so forth. So if you're not familiar with some of the other teaching roles in the school, that can be a really nice way to just sort of read that description and kind of get a little bit of understanding about what those roles are within the school. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Karen for a moment, and then it'll be back to me in a moment. So take it away, Karen. I can't hear you. Sorry, Karen.
Is that better?
Yes, I've got you now.
Okay, thank you. My headset is playing up. Has been for a while. Okay, well, and I guess I want you to maybe go back to that fourth quadrant there about your students, and I wanted to introduce kind of a way, a little bit, some tools that might help you understand who your students are, where they're coming from, and a little bit of background details. And in terms of that, I want to introduce you to the kind of learning analytics in general around, and we have a couple of tools around here. One of them is called Course Insights, and our new Ultra Blackboard site is also a fountain of knowledge for you. So just to bear with me while I kind of give you a bit of an understanding of why and how you could connect up your conversation with connect your conversation and your planning for the entire semester around who your students are and what they're going to need. So learning analytics, this is just a kind of a plan. And as Charlotte says, we've kind of made them quite text heavy so that you can actually take yourself through like a before semester, during semester, after semester, and then using that feedback to when you go to teach the course again. So it's a good plan, and have a think about it. It's about being about intentional about where you get the data from and how you use it in the future. Can you just go to the next slide, please, Charlotte? Okay, so Course Insights was built by a team over a period of 5 years. And if you have access to your Blackboard site already, you should be able to find it. Now, I'm assuming that everybody has, no, I'm assuming that everybody's in Blackboard Ultra, but if you're not in Blackboard Ultra yet, Blackboard Original shows you. So if you go to the left-hand side, you can see that's the original. So the left-hand side of your screen under Tools, you should be able to find Course Insights. For Blackboard Ultra, you can go to the right-hand side, and that's where you will find that new access point. Now, the whole point of this Course Insights, when it was put together, the idea was that you could have filterable and comparative user interface for teaching staff to gain actionable insight from student data. So it's basically designed so that as your course unfolded, that you could keep, I guess, tabs on what your students were doing in terms of how much they were accessing your Blackboard sites, how much they were accessing videos, how much they were accessing different parts of your course. But also there was the opportunity to kind of do comparison around their work, their assessment items as well. Can you go to the next? Actually, I might get you. If you can go to the next slide. What I'm going to do now, and if you could just bear with me for 2 seconds while I. Okay, so if you haven't found Course Insights in your own place, I'm just going to quickly run you through 3.5 minutes or less, telling you that, in fact, there is another session later in this week that will make a deeper dive into this process around learning analytics. And what I'm going to show you here is a sandpit site that we put together to demonstrate the affordance of Course Insights. And as I said, if you have your own course, you should be able to access it through. So can I get you to jump out? And I will share with you. Feel free to jump in and ask any questions as we go. Okay, so this is what Course Insights looks like. As you can see, as I said, this is a sandpit. So we've actually plugged a course into it, and it gives you a bit of an understanding. So this particular course, you can see the number of students at a glance, number of international students, non-English speaking students, and repeating students, which actually might be really useful for you. You can see roll down, roll down, roll down. So you can get an understanding of where your students are coming from, particularly when Charlotte was talking earlier about in the quadrants there. It's a good idea to kind of understand if your course is a service course that's taught across numbers of different faculties and the kinds of students that it might attract. Gives you a bit of an age distribution and the language distribution as well. So moving through down the side, this, as I said, is designed, so gives you an understanding. This is the whole course, obviously, and so in its entirety. But you could track this as you go through through the life of the course life cycle. You can see, gives you hardest problems. It gives you quiz things. It gives you the top videos people might have been watching if that's in case something you're doing there. It also can give you access, if you've got readings from the library, it can give you access to the number of students that have read those readings from the library. So quite comprehensive data available here. It's super valuable for understanding students and their assessment across the course life cycle. So you can actually kind of get an understanding of what the students, how they're going. You can also check across, so you can see assignment 1, assignment 2, assignment 3, and midterm. So you can check across the life cycle of the course to see if students are improving or not, as it may be. This part is my favorite part of it because this part is about how you can email your students. So you can see this here. So you might decide that you want to send an email to your students to say, well done to all of those people who got 80 and above in the last quiz. If you didn't get that, then maybe you might decide that you would want to send an email to your students who were not doing so well and to give them some understanding of where they can get some support. So it's it's kind of a one-stop shop, providing you with access to uh, all of these things. So to get a better idea of how to use this tool and other tools in Ultra, we've actually got a course running later in the week that takes a deep dive in here. But I wanted to just give you a bit of a taster so that you can kind of understand the kinds of tools available to help you when you are working at the beginning of your course and also during the time of your course. So I just want to, can I flick it back to you? I will stop sharing. And is there any questions so far about that? Okay, so have a look at later in the week, but I'll flick it back to you. Oop, the Ultra link. Can you just flick back to that slide? So in the right hand, oops, back. Okay. So in the right hand side column, Julia, on Ultra, you can see on the, okay, so you have the course in Learn. Yeah, so does your course look like the Blackboard original on the left or the Blackboard Ultra? Uh, oh, okay. Can I just check that, Victor and Julia, and I'll get back to you on that, just to make sure that it's still going. Okay. Thanks for investigating. Can I flick it back to you, Charlotte, please, and we can go from there.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Karen. To answer your question, Josephine, how do we change to Ultra? So there is an ongoing Ultra transition that's happening across each of the faculties. So most Blackboards are already now in Ultra, but if you're not already in Ultra, there will be a plan to get your course into Ultra. That's happening sort of at a faculty level. There's e-learning ultra advisors. I can't remember their exact name right now, but they are working on transitioning all of the courses in faculty from Blackboard Original to Blackboard Ultra. So if your course has not already been done, it will be on the list. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Okay, so we'll just take a moment to pause here. I'd like you to either in the chat or in your own personal space on your own Word document, whatever works for you, note down 3 things that you will do to learn more about your course after what we've just sort of outlined and who your students will be. Okay. So as I said, we'll pause briefly just to let you sort of feel out this little list of things that you're going to do sort of later on as well. So if you've noted down some things based on this morning's discussion, that's wonderful. Okay. Um, so the next thing we're going to talk about is sort of making best use of your course profile and your Blackboard site and other sort of platforms. So there are quite a lot of sort of I'm labeling them as administrative tasks at UQ, and these are sort of the essential tasks just to kind of get your course up and presentable to students. And that's not even including things like preparing your lecture slides, writing the assessment, managing and coordinating with your team. Okay. So the first thing is you need to develop and submit your course profile. And now the date for, well, first of all, you have to submit your course profile for review by the date specified by your school. Now, that varies from school and faculty. So again, usually either your program convener or your director of teaching and learning can tell you when that process is due. And some schools have more rigorous review processes than others. So again, even the review process will potentially vary from school. If you have never edited a course profile before, there is a link there that kind of tells you what are the different parts of the course profile and what needs to be mentioned in those. But again, looking at previous course profiles can also help give you a sense of what you might be aiming for in your articulation to the students around that course. You need to request a learn.uq course site, or this is also called a Blackboard site, and sometimes we call it a BB site. If you see that abbreviation, that means Blackboard for your course. Now, again, this can vary between schools and faculties. Some schools, the administration team will order it on behalf of course coordinators, but in most schools, course coordinators will need to order these for themselves. And I've linked there to the instructions on how you do that. Now, if the course has been taught before, you can ask for all the content of that course to be copied over to your new course, and then all you need to do is update the content. But if it's a new course, then you'll need to order a new Blackboard site and then populate that information for yourself. Oh, sorry, you need to create and publish the course reading list in another platform, which is called Talus Aspire, and that's the library platform. That puts all the readings for your course. And that usually needs to be done at least 8 weeks before the start of semester for items that you expect students to purchase a copy of and that you've labeled as required. So if it's recommended, then they won't necessarily order it in for the students to have a physical copy of it. But equally, it could be required, but it might be a journal article, and therefore they don't need to get like a physical copy of it, in which case, because it's accessible digitally through the library, in that case, you don't need to publish it 8 weeks in advance. This 8 week deadline is for things like if you want the students to have a physical copy of a textbook, because they need to read every single chapter in that textbook, then that might be something that you might require the library to get a copy in of. Yeah. We also say as much with the reading list, even if it's an article that you want students to sort of read on a week by week basis and it can be accessed through the library, it's not behind any kind of wall or anything, it's still really good practice to put the readings in Talus Aspire rather than uploading them directly to Blackboard, because we're not supposed to upload resources to Blackboard. That's against our copyright regulations. But if you link them through Talus, then all you have to do is link them to this particular reading list. And you can even organize that reading list as week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, or if you like to do things in modules, you can have, the cardiovascular module and all the readings for that particular module in that section. So it is quite flexible how you arrange things once you set up Talus Aspire, but that is the preferred way to do it rather than uploading documents or readings directly to Blackboard. So make sure you have any centrally or locally controlled spaces that you will need throughout the semester booked. So at some point when you've been allocated as a course coordinator, you will get an email from timetabling and they will say, what room spaces do you need? And we have both centrally and locally controlled spaces here at UQ. And so central spaces are the ones that are available to everyone at UQ. So anyone can use those spaces, and usually timetabling determine who gets access to which rooms based on need and numbers and various things like that. Locally controlled spaces are ones that are owned by particular schools and faculties, and typically they only let them out to courses and programs within their school or faculty. So for instance, you might have a laboratory that's organised by the Faculty of Science. And so if you're running laboratory classes, you would use those laboratory classes within your faculty. But that space would need to be booked with whoever looks after space within your school for that particular space. I realize this gets very complicated, but it is a little bit complicated around UQ. There's different rules and systems. So I'm just trying to make you aware of those things. So again, if hopefully all of this has already been booked, because if you're teaching sort of from next semester, from next week, you should already have your timetable locked in. But if you're teaching sort of for the first time in semester 2, you will get an email about timetabling later in the semester, and that's what it's looking at. how you can organize and book your rooms for your teaching, whether that's centrally or locally. Check SIGNET at the start of semester for your class list and any changes to the timetable and venue. So again, sometimes there's changes to the timetable, but usually you put your preferences into your room. So for instance, they won't often change you if you've asked for a lecture space to a collaborative space, or if you've asked for a collaborative space, they don't usually move you to a lecture space that doesn't allow collaboration unless they talk to you. But it's always good to just double check your SIGNET class list, and that will also let you know the numbers in your cohort. So sometimes you'll find that there's a big increase in numbers just before the start of semester. So, if you checked it in January and you only had 30 in your class, you might check now and find you have 130 in your class. So it's good to double check those things. Yeah, lovely. And if you have exams in your course, there are examination protocols, particularly if you're doing an end of semester exam. And so if you follow that link, it'll tell you sort of what documentation you need to get in, put in. But again, I would recommend talking to your director of teaching and learning if you're unsure about that, because sometimes your admin team in your schools or faculties will do checks before it goes to examination. So it is useful to just have that checks in place. So this is a lovely little clip from UQ Stalker Space. And if you're not sure what UQ Stalker Space is, it's a little Facebook group on Facebook that's called literally UQ Stalker Space, and people put posts up all around the place, predominantly students. I often stalk it to find out what students are doing and thinking, and it can be really quite funny to see, well, not funny, but insightful to see what students are talking about at any one time. And so this is one that students put up saying, shout out to all the course coordinators who've already uploaded their ECP, which is an electronic course profile. And so this particular student was really pleased to see the course profile up and available early, because sometimes they're not. So I've said course profile a lot through this presentation, and if you're not sure what it is, I'm about to tell you now. So it is sort of the official published guide of a course, okay? So it's used by students, staff, and the public. So it's available and visible. So once you publish it, it's viewable across the university, and anybody who, it's got the automation, that's what it is. I must have had my thumbs up, and that's why my hand gestures are coming up. It basically outlines what you'll be doing in your course to the students. So it will have things like the learning outcomes, the activities that you'll be doing, the assessment, the teaching staff, and the resources. And it's sort of like your contract to the student. So sort of saying, this is what you should expect in my course. And so the student can go into your course having an understanding of what the learning is going to be, what the assessment is going to be, and so forth. Now, at UQ, we have made it policy that course profiles be published at least 1 week prior to the first teaching activity. But as that comment from the student before suggests, students do like to be able to read the course profiles ahead of time if they can, particularly for some of those elective courses. For core courses, they don't necessarily have a choice. They'll need to do your course. But for some of those electives, it can really help students decide, do I want to do this course or do I want to do that course? And for certain students, it really helps with preparation for thinking about their assessment and their their work plans or their caring plans for the semester, to have an understanding of what the assessment or learning activities might be in that class. Oh, gone back. So we have the course profile, which is sort of the public student facing aspect. And what we call the system that you actually create the course profile in is called Jack. And it's called Jack for Jacaranda. And that's kind of the back end of the course profile. So when people say, oh, you need to fill out Jack for your course profile, that's all it means. It means the back end of the course profile, which is where you put all the information, and then that gets used to then publish the course profile. Okay. That's and then that information is sort of used for your reading list and Talus Aspire. And that's the one that when it gets published, it gets linked to your course Blackboard site as well. And again, so the course coordinator responsibilities, if you're a tutor, you probably won't be interacting with Jack, but if you're a course coordinator, you likely will be. So this is where you'll update and access the course instance in Jack. So you'll go through and make sure that everything is up to date. So for instance, you may have had a change in teaching staff and you may need to change who the teaching staff are. You will have likely potentially changed your assessment and when the assessments are due or the weighting of those assessments. So they will need to be changed. And there's a lovely little preview button that you can use to check what the readability of that looks like for students. And I would definitely advise doing that because sometimes they look very different. So just flagging what it looks like with that preview button is really, really handy. Um, the main things, obviously trying to make sure you're correct in all aspects of the course profile, because as I said, it's kind of like your contract with the student that this is what I'm going to do, and then you actually go and do it. But the main things that are really, really important to get right in your course profile is your assessment page. Okay, so that's the one that tells you what the assessments are, when they're due, what the weighting of them is, and what the marking range for those particular grade cutoffs are. Okay, and that's really important because after a certain period, which is usually 1 week after the start of semester, the course profile gets what we call locked down, which means you can't edit any of it. And you can, if you need to edit it, so say you've accidentally got the weighting for one of your assessments wrong, if you need to edit that, you need to go and get your ADA approval. So I always forget what this stands for. Academic. Can you remind me, Karen? Academic, Associate Dean Academic. There we go. It's the first A that gets me. Associate Dean Academic approval. So each faculty has an Associate Dean, and you will need to get their approval to change the assessment if it's beyond that sort of lockdown date. So it is quite important that you get those details right in the first instance. Other details, like if you need to do a room change on a learning activity, they don't need ADA approval, but anything around your assessment does. So it's really critical that that gets put in correctly. And then there's a workflow in Jack that sort of, once you've filled it out, you sort of press complete and it goes through to review. Oh, we have a question. No, that's Karen. Yes, it's a single point of truth in your contract with the students. Yeah. Okay. So your course learning site, which is your Blackboard site. So this is where another sort of administrative task is you need to develop and update your course site. So once you've ordered it, it's your responsibility as the course coordinator to go in and update it. Okay. Now, again, if you haven't ever done this before, I've got some links there to some sort of self-paced workshops that can help you go through how to do different things in Blackboard. Otherwise, there are e-learning workshops and they're all through Ready to Teach Week. So if you need to learn how to set up a quiz, how to send an announcement, how to manage your grade center, all of those sorts of things, those are the workshops that I would sign up for. So if you're not familiar with what Blackboard is, it's a learning management system, and it basically is kind of a repository for all of the information in your course. Okay, it's where you will put your lecture slides or your tutorial activities, where you put your assessment task descriptions and your rubrics. It's where you can send announcements to your students to say, by the way, there's been a room change, or don't forget your assignment's due in week 3, or whatever it is that you need to announce to your students. It's also where you put all the grades for students' assessments and where you calculate students' overall grades, and that's where it gets uploaded then at the end of the semester to sign it. So it's very important to get your Blackboard sort of organized and structured, both for yourself and for your teaching team. And so that's one of the core responsibilities as a course coordinator, is sort of updating and keeping your course site organized. Something that's really important for your course site is trying to be consistent in your course design. Okay. UQ encourages a really consistent design structure, and we actually sort of have an exemplar site to show you sort of how you can potentially organize it. But making sure that, assessment content is always in the assessment folder, for instance, making sure you have week 1, week 2, week 3, and you're not putting content for week 1 in week 3 and so forth. But you can even have consistency of organization within each folder. So for instance, when I structure my courses, I like to have, week 1, before class, this is what you'll do. Then I'll have during class, and these are the resources that we'll use during the class. And then I might have another one that says after class. So these are the things I expect you to do after class. And I'll follow that theme, or like course design, sort of consistent course design through each of my workshops and weeks. So week 1 will have that, week 2 will have that, week 3 will have that. So then the student's cognitive load to determine how they've got to find things in my course is reduced because it's the same way in every single folder in Blackboard. That's just the way I like to do it, but I find that students find that consistency quite helpful because if each week has a different layout, that can be really tricky. Then if you times that by the other sort of courses that the students have, so times that by 4, if every single course has a different layout of their worksheets or workbooks or folders every single week, it makes a lot for students to have to navigate and when they haven't even started learning the content yet. This is just them trying to access the content. And the other thing is making your course site available to students as early as possible. So again, we have a minimum that your course sites have to be open by O week. So the start of O week, this isn't like 1 week before the first teaching activity. This is by the start of O week. All Blackboard sites are supposed to be open to students. And this is often their first impression of your course. Okay, so it's really good to make it a positive one. So I often like to have, particularly because I used to teach first semester, first year, I used to have like a start here folder. So if they were completely new to Blackboard, they knew where to go. So I'd send out an announcement and say, welcome to the class. I'm Charlotte. This is what I'm planning to do for this semester. You'll find access to the course learning site. This is what this means. There's a start here folder that will tell you what we're doing, where we're going, and so forth. Because if you open it for the first time and you don't know what you're doing, and you see that there's an assessment folder, there's a week 1, week 2, week 3, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So sort of articulating students, where do they start? And giving access to them early so they can kind of get familiar before the heat of semester starts and things start to get really, really crazy for them. So just that little bit of settle time for them is really important.
If you there, Charlotte, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
There's a question from Leonie around adding a reading list to the additional, which is not compulsory. And I just wanted to confirm with you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that question? Just wanted to
Yeah.
confirm with you. Because I know if you put PDFs up, that's against copyright.
Mm-hmm.
But links in your Blackboard site, I think is okay.
Yeah, it is okay. So you just what we try and avoid is downloading a PDF and then uploading it to Blackboard. But if you do want to add a resource that's not in Talus, and you can actually update Talus Aspire throughout the whole semester. So even if you want to have put in optional readings into Talus Aspire late in the semester, you're absolutely welcome to do that. But if they are not compulsory and you want to put them in the weeks, you are welcome to do that. But what we recommend is that you find the link for the Permi link, it's called a Permi link from the library for that particular reading, and you add that to your Blackboard site as a link, and then the students can click on the link and they'll be taken to that Permi link, which will then allow them to access the reading in the appropriate way for copyright. It is a bit convoluted, but we are very cognizant of trying to respect the copyright, and if we have had instances of that being breached, and so we've all kind of been told very strictly, don't upload PDFs to Blackboard. Put a link through to the resource in the library. Leonie, does that answer your question?
And
It does to
Thomas,
some
Yeah,
standard, yeah,
yeah,
because they're just links for additional reading for them to
yeah.
do, but they're not actually a PDF or anything.
Okay. Yeah. Are they just
So
like websites and things like
yeah,
that? Yeah,
yeah.
that's completely fine. So you're welcome to
Okay,
put those as links in your reading for each week. That's not a
yeah.
problem. Yeah.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, however you want to organize it makes sense. I just make sure it's consistent and it's clear to students. But yes, you're more than welcome to do it that way, Leonie. Yeah. Okay. So Blackboard is the most frequently used platform, not surprising because it's got all of our resources on it. It's more frequently attended than our physical spaces. And so this is a student sort of articulates that idea of having consistency in your course design. So they've said, in my experience with Blackboard varies with different courses and depends on how organized the course coordinator is. For instance, A is very organized. He puts all the relevant material in the appropriate folders, making it very easy for us to access. Overall, the experience is pretty good. You just scroll down and see the content for weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. In fact, I'm looking at it right now. So again, that consistency of course design is really helpful for students. It seems like a simple thing, but it really means a lot to students. If you have a clear flow in your Blackboard site, I find it not only helps the student, but it helps you because you can kind of see how your course is structured and flowing. And the other thing I'll highlight here with the students saying, that the content is available for a few weeks. Now, often we try and release content sort of 1 week in advance, but it can actually be really helpful if you have the capacity to do so, to open your content 2 or 3 weeks in advance, because that allows for students to get ahead, because we have a lot of students who may be carers and can't always have to study ahead for one period, for periods where they can't do, or they might have a disability, which means, or a health issue, which means that they can have really peak times of feeling really, really healthy, and they might want to progress further in their studies for the times that they're really ill and may actually fall behind. So sometimes having that content available earlier can really assist quite a few students in your course, if you have capacity to do that, of course, because I know sometimes it can be tricky with competing deadlines at UQ. So organisation matters to students is my key takeaway here. Okay, I'm going to pause again. Feel free to write down some notes about what things you might think about to do in your course this semester based on what we've talked about this morning, or things you might go and check based on what we've done here this morning. If you want to, you're welcome to put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm happy if you just write it on a Word document or however you want to do it wherever you're situated. And I'll pause for a moment there. Really good question. Thank you, Julia. So I usually put the before, during. So if people haven't read the chat, the question from Julia is, do you put the before, during, and after in each week, or at an or or as an announcement? So typically I do both. So I will put sort of, as I said, I'll have a week one folder, and I'll have before class, during class, and after class. And I'll often send an announcement at the beginning of the week that says, hello everyone, welcome to week one, that what we're trying to achieve this week is blah, 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 blah. What I would like you to do before class is this, during class is this, after class is this. You will find those relevant things outlined in the folder below. And then I'll do the same thing for week two. I'll say, building on the last week, now we're exploring this. Again, I had first year, first semester, so I needed to do a lot more scaffolding for how the students interacted in my course, because if you have sort of 200 students, it can get wayward very fast. So I was probably overly explicit with my students. You may not necessarily need to do that with some of if you're sort of teaching second and third year, but that is certainly what I did for my students, and they found it useful. But yeah, so I did them both. So really good point about potentially using an announcement to sort of reinforce that structure. Yeah.
Just can you hear me, Charlotte?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just noticed Peter has noticed that some people might think they're here for 50 minutes, but we're actually here for an hour and 20 minutes. So if you're actually if you're planning to leave at 1:30, then that's fine. We will have this recorded and you will be able to access that last half an hour. So apologies for that mismatch in our timing. So yeah, so just be aware. But we'll be here till nearly 2:00.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. As long as that's what we're actually allocated, because that's sort of planned, that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll move on. We'll move on to make sure, just in case. But yes, I won't be insulted if you need to leave early. I wouldn't have been anyway, but yeah. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next part, which is sort of designing your communication strategy and thinking about your students' expectations and your expectations for your students as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about communication. So how much communication is enough? And as I said, I used to have first year, so I used to do a fair amount of communication, but I did it at only key points. So I wasn't trying to send heaps and heaps of communication, but I was trying to make sure that when I did communicate, it was really explicit and I covered quite a bit of content. So how much is enough to your students to you? And it's really about setting those parameters early so people are kind of on the same page, particularly if you have those really large courses. Um, so how do you communicate with your students? You can do it through the course profile, as we said, because that's your contract to the students. It tells them what the learning outcomes are, what the activities are, what the assessment are. So that's one avenue that you can talk to your students. In the course profile, you'll often also say how you're going to deal with extensions and late submissions and all of those sorts of things. So having a think early about what you want to do, because again, once you've set it in the course profile, you need to enact it. So really think carefully about what it is that you want to communicate to students through your course profile as well. And you can be passionate in your course profile as well if you want. You can be excited about your course, like come and join my course because you're going to learn about the cell and what it does, or whatever it is you do in your course. So it doesn't have to be completely dry. You are allowed to sell it a little bit in your course profile as well if you'd like to. You also communicate to students through your Blackboard announcement, as Julia just sort of emphasized to us before. That is one mechanism that can be quite useful to communicate with your students. And as we said before, Blackboard is our primary platform for sort of digital learning experiences, and it is critical to delivery. So we are going to talk a little bit about sort of communication through that medium, and then how you might also manage the students' expectation for the communication strategy as well. So how do you communicate with your students via a Blackboard announcement? So in Blackboard, that is one of the main places to sort of send an announcement. But as Karen said, you can also do it through Course Insights. But most of the time, if you're emailing your whole cohort, you will do it through Blackboard announcements. Okay. So students have said that receiving every announcement by email. So you have the option in Blackboard of sending your announcement as an email or just leaving it as an announcement. And if you leave it as an announcement, when the students log in, they'll see that it'll kind of come up as a little banner and it'll say, you have an announcement from your course coordinator. Or you can select the send an email copy to recipients, and then that will go to the student's email. Okay. So, but they have said that, receiving too many announcements can be stressful. So really think about how you're using your announcements. Some people send 3 announcements a week. That's a lot. Sometimes you might want to be like, I'm going to send one announcement and it's going to have all the key things that the students will need to do for that week. Okay. But sending multiple can cause stress. And the other thing I would think about is when you're sending an announcement. So, try to keep the sending of your announcements between work hours, for instance. Sending an announcement at 9 p.m. at night could potentially send mixed messages in terms of then is it appropriate for students to email you at 9 o'clock at night? But also it might cause students stress if they see there's an email at 9 o'clock at night and they have a class the next morning, they might be stressed that they have to do or respond to something at that particular time. So again, thinking about the timing of your email as well. So you can, there's a little screenshot there that shows you where you can tick to send an announcement copy to recipients. So if you tick that, it will send it as an email. You can also schedule announcements, and this can be really handy, particularly if you want to write all of your announcements ahead of time and then schedule them to send. You are welcome to do that if you're particularly organized, or if you know that you want to send a reminder email to, here is access to relevant support services before or after an assessment item or whatever it is, or a reminder that an assessment item is coming up. You can schedule as you want to. And it's also a good way that if you are writing your announcement at 9 o'clock at night, you can schedule it to send at 9 o'clock the next morning, but you can tick it off as done for that particular day. So it is a useful tool, that one. So first impressions matter. And again, we're right at the beginning of the semester at the moment. So we're trying to give you some things to sort of tick off to do at this point if you would like to. So you can send a welcome email or a video or a podcast or a link to a Padlet at the beginning of the assessment, at the beginning of the semester. It can be a really nice way to introduce yourself to students, to get to know them, and sort of be a friendly face, which in a time that can be really anxiety producing. Okay. Send out another one again at the start of the semester and a week in to sort of catch students who enrolled late. So, you can send it again and just say, just a reminder, I did just send this stuff, but for those of you who may have joined late, welcome. We see you as well. You are welcome in this course. You can just post it to the Learn site without sending it as an announcement. So as I said before, you can just post an announcement and not send it. So you can do it that way. You can be brief or not so brief, depending on your cohort. Some people like to send just a brief, hello, I'm here. This is what the course is. Welcome, as a really brief get to know you, and then send a more detailed email later on with the sort of more formal things. So it's up to you how you want to navigate that space, but it can be useful to do both. It is something, as I said, to get the students started. Some may not know where Learn UQ is or Blackboard, how to get there. So it's really important to sort of send that to sort of set the theme. And think, as I said before, about having a start here folder, particularly for your first years who, when they open the site, they might not have any sense of where to go or what to do. So how do students communicate with you? These are suggestions, and as I said before, there's a toolbox, so you can use or not use things as you want. But typically, we recommend that you direct all non-personal communication to your Blackboard through either the Ed discussion board, or you might have a Padlet. And obviously, personal communication goes still to the course coordinator or whoever is managing the personal communication, but non-personal communication can go to those other spots. You can use discussion boards or wikis or blogs as a place for students to ask those questions. You or a tutor or a co-lecturer can monitor the discussions and check. You might want to communicate with your students when you're going to check. So you might say, I'm going to check the discussion board these hours on Wednesday and Friday. So students know to kind of get their questions in by that time. And if a student emails you directly with a question, you can say, that's a great question. I'm going to put that on the discussion board and I'll put my answer there. So you're kind of redirecting them back to that spot, because if you answer them via the email, they'll be like, great, I'll just keep emailing you the question. But if you redirect them to get the answer from the discussion board, they'll often just start asking it there. Or the Padlet, as Padlet's also a lovely one to put questions as well. And so why this works, generally you answer once and that answer will help everyone, because if you respond to one student email, only that one student, unless they're studying with friends, gets the benefit of that answer. So all students get the same information. And hopefully, usually, it reduces your email overload as well, because often if students start to go to those discussion boards or Padlets, they can actually start to find some of the answers to the questions themselves. And you can even sort of coach students in that as well, like put your answer up, double check that we haven't already addressed that question elsewhere on the discussion board, and so forth. So recommendations: set up expectations clearly at the beginning of the semester with the course profile. Do your welcome message in it, whichever format works for you. And go over those things in your first lecture to just reiterate again, and maybe a repeat in 1 week, because you may have students who have come in late. And also it may take a little while because students are overwhelmed, so sometimes getting the information a few times can help. Setting guidelines in place and making it clear from the beginning is really beneficial to you. So what the expectations are for your students. As the semester progresses, students may need a reminder. So for instance, around assessment time, to use the discussion board or use the Padlet for their questions, because often when they get stressed, they'll email you. And if it's a question about assessment, you might be better off directing them to those other platforms. And this has been shown to greatly reduce numbers for a lot of lecturers, so it can be really helpful. It can be frustrating and it feels really unhelpful when you get those first emails, because you just want to respond to the student because you can tell that they're stressed, but redirecting them back to those other platforms can be really, really helpful in the long run. So as an example, this is one that we've taken, an academic has provided. So they've sort of communicated with their students that all non-personal messages should be posted to this particular discussion board. We will check it on these days. Informal chatting can happen in this space. So they've even said like where informal chatting can happen as well. Personal messages should be directed to the course coordinator with the course code in the subject line. So that, again, setting the expectation to students that I may teach multiple courses. Please don't expect that I will know exactly which course you are referring to when you email me. If you have inquiries about an extension, please check the extension policy. These are my open door hours. And then they've also said, check your UQ email daily. Communications sent to the email are expected to sort of have been read within 24 hours. I will also say if students a lot of students don't often read their student email because they're like, oh, I prefer my personal email. You can ask, they can set up a redirect. Just get them to redirect their student email to their personal email and they'll get the emails that way as well. And please abide by the student charter. So that particular course coordinator, that was really important that the students were aware of the student charter and were adhering to it. And again, this is a slide that Professor Kate O'Brien uses. So they sort of flag early in the semester, this is what good and not so good communication via email will look like in this course. So they coach their students in sort of how to address them via email because that's how they expect to be emailed. So they say, on the left-hand side, it's like this is what I expect in terms of effective and polite email versus an email that doesn't necessarily have any important information for me to be able to help you. So again, some course learners get a lot of information and a lot of emails from students. The clearer they can be for you, the quicker you can help them. So just maybe training students in that a little bit as well so that they know what the expectation is on how they should email you. Okay, and again, apologies, this is a dense slide again, but then we've done that so that you have a referral point. So communicate consistently and regularly. So plan your first point of contact with your students, how you're going to welcome them, both online and in the first class. Okay, so they can be really important to kind of set the tone for how you're going to sort of create the environment for your course. As we said, first impressions matter. So consider how you'll convey your enthusiasm for the course and help students feel like they belong and set expectations for the course. So it can be really nice for that joy and excitement of your course to come through. Sometimes that's why sometimes a video is really nice because you can kind of convey the energy a little bit more, but completely up to you. So yeah, you can prepare a welcome video and send it as an announcement to students if you would like to. And you can we've given you some ideas for some sample welcomes and message script there if you're looking for some inspiration. Think about how you'll communicate with your students throughout the semester and how they will communicate with you. So you might even think about as you're planning your course, you might think, all right, I'm going to send an announcement these weeks. This is what I'm going to say. And then you might say, I might do a check-in with my students in class through like an anonymous poll on these weeks to see how they're doing and which concepts they might be struggling with. So again, planning that out from the get-go. Think of the communication situations you want and how you'll handle it. So again, sort of placing it through the semester and think about what you want to do there. Prepare to talk with your students and other teaching staff about academic integrity. So that's quite important, obviously, here at UQ. And for some students, or for many students, some of them will have a really strong sense of academic integrity, depending on where they've studied previously and what they've done at school or other programs. And others, this may be their first interaction with it. And also, what's considered academic integrity here in Australia might be very different to what's considered academically I can't say that word, how they perceive academic integrity in other countries. So being really explicit about what we mean when we say academic integrity. And we have some really great resources that you can use to sort of talk you through that conversation with your students. And that's available there on that link. And again, communicating to all your contributors. So your tutors, your guest lecturers, any people you have from industry who are coming in, letting them know the times and the dates and the places and the deadlines for your course. Because bearing in mind, particularly if you have people from external to the university, they're not going to know when the teaching semester is. They don't know when the mid-semester break is, all of those sorts of things. So making sure you've been really explicit in communicating when they're expected to come in and so forth. I'll also flag there, remember when you're thinking about dates to think about your public holidays, particularly in semester one. There's a lot of them. Keep an eye out for them because you can miss them and then it throws your whole schedule. And then if you have the capacity, if you have guest lecturers coming in, you might want to invite them to join a class the week before so they kind of get a sense of what they're lining up with, but that may not be possible. So it might just be that you send a few notes to them to say, this is what we covered this week. This is how you could potentially link in next week. Or you can go to the class and top and tail it. So you can sort of do the bridging from the last week into your guest lecturers talk, they can talk, and then you kind of feed it out into what's going to happen the next week as well.
can I just jump in there, Charlotte, too?
Absolutely.
I was also saying for the people who are new to UQ, we also have academic integrity modules that the students actually have to complete
Yeah, good
if
point.
they're new to UQ. So for our first years, or they've come in from another university, they have to complete it, and the dates are available on the website. But they have to complete the first one before they start, and the second one maybe midway through the term. Oh, and I forgot, we've got Peter, who's the
We've got
absolute
Peter. Yeah,
expert.
he's the expert.
Excellent. Can you just
Yeah.
remind me when they have to complete those, Peter?
Yeah, you must have seen the microphone button.
Yeah.
The first one they have to complete before census date, second one before week 13, the end of week 13.
Yeah.
And we encourage them not to go on and do part B, which is the second one, because we want them to do some assessment at the university level before they go into it.
Yeah,
Because
that
it's
makes
a little
sense.
bit more complex and a little bit more nuanced. But certainly, the first three modules of Part A, we'd love to see it done before census date.
And the penalties, Peter?
It is mandatory, and if they haven't completed by week 13, both parts A and B, then they're prevented from receiving the results, and they can't enrol for the following semester until such time that it's done.
Yeah. Thank
I'll
you,
just
Peter.
point out too that if you as new teachers would like to get an idea of what the students are learning, you've got access to the academic integrity modules. Just do a Google search, UQ Library and academic integrity modules. But we also have a companion piece that's designed for staff that gives you a good feel for what the students are encouraged to learn as well. And you can get that one through the Italy site. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're on our last checklist because we're coming up to closing time. Although I realize that you probably thought we were closing, potentially some of you thought we were closing a bit earlier, but we're getting close to closing time now. So this last checklist, I'd like to have a think about how you communicate with your students. What can they expect in your course? What do you expect them to do? What will they expect you to do? And sort of write the first three sentences of a welcome announcement. I'm not actually going to make you share that in the chat today because otherwise we'll run out of time. But I would like you to just think about those things in your checklist, particularly after this session, to really have a think about how you're going to communicate with your students, because it can be so rushed, or at least I often find the rush to get ready for the semester, to get all your lectures and everything, because you're so focused on what content I have to deliver that you forget about, oh, how am I going to make sure I communicate this appropriately to students? So just taking a moment, pausing and thinking about those things can be really, really useful. So I'll let you do that in your own time with the questions. But what I would like to just spend a few seconds on is thinking about, does anyone have any tips that they would like to share in the chat of things that they have found useful to get you sort of started and ready for the semester? Because we'll spend a little bit on this just before we close out for the day. So one of my favorites, and I think Karen, it's one of yours favorites as well, is if you have never taught in a teaching space at UQ, find a room somewhere around the university and test out the technology in the lecture room. Okay, how to turn on the camera, how to turn on the lectern, how to use the microphone, because inevitably that will be a little bit of a source of stress on your first day. So just thinking about how am I going to open it, how do I get access to my slides, that kind of thing can be useful to just sort of alleviate the stress. Because at UQ we try and finish our lectures or our workshops and things 10 minutes before the hour. So you will have 10 minutes to get in to get ready for your class. Okay, so it seems like a lot of time, but it goes really quickly. So I would recommend checking out the lecture space. Does anybody have any other ones that they'd like to share about things that they've found good? Karen. Oh, you're on mute again, Karen. 2 second delay with your headset.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, apologies, people. Okay,
Okay.
so regarding that, checking into your learning space, it's actually probably worth going to your actual learning space. But
Yeah.
if you're new to UQ, the other thing is that if you're not new to UQ, then there's a new way to log into it's a new way to log into the system. So you might want to check that out before. What it actually does now is you no longer lecture, you're going in with your own credentials. And that means that you can log into, you can go directly into Microsoft 365 or any other the suite of tools that we have. But it's worth going there and having a look for the first time because it looks a little bit different than it did before. But for those of you who are new, it'll just be fine. But there'll be there's instructions that should be coming from your directors of teaching and learning and your ADAs, in fact.
Yeah. I must admit, I used it the other day in one of the teaching spaces. Much, much easier to get into your PowerPoints and everything now with this system, because it used to be you log in with lecture, and you have to go log in and do separate. Whereas if you log in with your credentials, I'd put my PowerPoint slides into my personal Teams chat, and then I was able to open it straight away. Any advice for newbies going in to teach our first class? It's a really good one. I would say take a breath and think about what the students are getting to learn for the first time, because we get really nervous about making sure that we teach everything and get everything out, but they're equally as nervous and they're equally sort of trying to do the best that they can. So just taking a moment, pausing, and also realizing that teaching is iterative. So if you come out of your first lecture and you're like, oh, I didn't quite land that properly, or oh, I should have emphasized this point more, you have time to do it again for the next time. Okay, so it's okay. Nothing is usually completely irreparable. Karen.
And I was just going to say, the really interesting thing is that we've actually been doing some research around this, and some of our students are going, well, I'm not going to go to the first lecture because they're just going to tell me all the stuff that I'm going to learn. Whereas there's a corollary to that kind of idea, is that maybe that first lecture should be, hey, so glad you're here. This is what we're really going to do this semester. So make it exciting, make it vibrant, so that they'll kind of go, oh, I'm excited to learn, as opposed to, because sometimes it just becomes, I was going to use the word transactional, where you kind of go, this is what we're doing, this is all the assessment. So it's a kind of, maybe it's a combination of both of those things that you might want to attempt, but certainly making them feel like it's going to be a great semester. And I mean, you'd like them to walk out of your first lecture saying, this could be my new favorite class.
Yeah. But yeah, Aurora, the other thing I would recommend is having a kind of a clear structure to your session, and try and kind of keep a similar, just like you have a similar structure on your Blackboard, having a similar structure to your lectures or your workshops. So for instance, if you're going to start by getting the students to think about a question, or doing a little quiz or a poll or some kind of interactivity, then you might talk for a little bit, and then you might do another thing, and then you might close out every session with an individual reflection, however you want to structure it, but try and have a similar structure so students kind of know this is how the classes are going to run. This is kind of how I'm expected to engage and interact. Because again, it just reduces that cognitive load for students about what's coming next, and they can just think, okay, I know this and this and this, and then they can just kind of take in the content that you're teaching. It also helps you because then you know kind of what the flow is for each session as well, which kind of works. Excellent point. If use the microphone in the teaching space is very important. Even if you're in a small space, it really helps for students with accessibility for the hearing loops, because often people say, oh, I'll just project, can you hear me? The people who may not be able to hear you may not be able to answer that question. So using the microphone really helps for that, but it also helps for students who are listening back on the recording as well. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Sorry, Julia, to clarify, I sent myself the slides through by chatting them to myself, and then when I logged in through the system, I opened the Teams functionality on the desktop, and then I was able to it went straight into my Teams, and I could open the PowerPoint from there. Excellent tip, Miguel. Okay, well, let me click to the next slide. We've also got this link to a Padlet, which sort of has all the different sort of materials and resources that you might find useful throughout the semester as well. So we've just kind of put all the links in a little Padlet for you to use and refer back to. So again, we'll send you these slides. If you want to click into the Padlet, you'll then have access to these resources. So sort of who to go to if you need support on particular things. Thank you. We'll leave it there. Thank you for your interaction on the chat. Really, really hope it's been helpful. Unfortunately, we can't get through everything, but hopefully this is just a few tips and tricks that will help you for your semester. I believe we're about to send out a little survey poll for you. If you could please fill that in, that would be really helpful. And also just a reminder of the other sessions that are available during Ready to Teach Week this week. Thank you all.